So anybody that hasn't seen the other video, Musa al-Gharbi, a very interesting writer, he claims that the 2016 election was, I don't know if you say largely like due to like socioeconomic factors and complaints, but definitely played a significant enough role that, would be one of the, many factors that swung the election in favor of Trump, right? Every election, any given time, you have like, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 competing factors and variables. And this one was a major one. So, I've been into his kind of like class-based analyses. Like he argues for a lot of the same stuff that I believe and that I've been writing about for a while, such as the fact that, if you want a permanent sort of like, liberal progressive majority, right? And because you already sort of have it, in the works, right? In the making, like for that to actually happen, you need like a set of like New Deal type policies that simply can't, they can't be eliminated. And they can't be disassociated with your party and your brand, right? Because, like with all the problems that people just face day to day in a material sense, like the only thing that truly moves a large enough number of people besides like the culture war is like one thing. Yes. But the other thing, right, that could sway elections, even more easily would be policies that people truly want and miss, right? So, it's clearly, closer to like my own ideological biases and whatnot, but, it was, it's interesting to read, given the fact that so many of the like 2016, it was sexism, it was racism analyses. Like they just keep fucking coming back. It's like this fucking zombie that you keep trying to hit it over the head with a shovel again and again and again, and it's just not gonna fucking die. Like I said earlier in the stream, if you did not watch that clip, I still argue with people that I know that like it's wrong to say that sexism or racism is like the defining factor in 2016, right? I mean, given like the smorgasbord of items that you could choose from at any given time, just think about psychologically what's going on, that you want to privilege explicitly a sexism or a racism explanation, right? Anyway, I think it's very nice and important to think about just people's material interests when they do and say certain things, because to what degree are they like escaping that average kind of fate, right? You have no reason to assume so, and if their actions don't show it. Anyway, so Musa al-Gharbi, by way of introduction, wrote this essay. I believe this is in 2015, although he mentions 2016. Yeah, so this is all the way back in 2015. This is before it was certain that Trump would be the Republican nominee. This was before, Trump was still kind of like, I'm not sure if you guys remember 2015 explicitly, but he was still very much like a circus kind of like figure, right? He was there just to like draw ratings. But so much was like bubbling under the surface, right? That people missed, right? Which is why they missed the eventual presidency of Donald Trump. The fact that somebody like that could win against a disliked career politician. And I feel like this essay. Let me just give you the whole thing, since we're not reading the whole thing. Don't say Black Lives Matter, prove it. This essay contextualizes and kind of like summarizes so many of the problems that we've been bringing up on stream the last few hours. So let's just go through this chunk and like comment as we go along. Paradoxical racisms. 2016 is shaping up to be a particularly populist election cycle, and both parties have been seeking to politicize Black Lives Matter in order to motivate their respective bases. You remember what was happening in 2015, right? 2015, we still had ongoing BLM protests, which started back in 2014 in response to the Garner killing in New York City. We had, tons of like police brutality incidents that, were making news all the time. And back then it was still the same cultural war issue it is now, except clearly just numerically, like there's been a shift, right? Where people have, on the one hand, at least like by their admitted like self-perception, like more cognizant of racial issues. But then on the other hand, like that Black Lives Matter movement was like sort of like, I don't want to say that it was co-opted by libs, but like what it was in 2014 versus what it is today. Black Lives Matter is like in corporate logos. Like it's been sort of, domesticated a little bit. Like it's become much more of a wedge issue because people are sort of buying into it like as a class, but they're buying into it in the same kind of like almost a consumerist way that any kind of generic, liberal at any time in human history, would have bought into these kinds of narratives. Okay. So anyway, I don't want this to just be like my rants about this shit. So let's actually get through this thing. Republican presidential candidates have been extremely critical of the movement, perhaps none more so than Ben Carson, whose political career has been largely premised on saying everything the RNC's overwhelmingly white constituency wants to hear a colored person say. Again, 5 years later, right? We think of Ben Carson in different lights as well. Of course, the assumption that comments can't be racist if a black guy says them, and the resultant push to elevate dark horse candidates like Alan Keyes, Herman Cain, and Ben Carson to articulate positions that perhaps most other blacks find to be racist, this is already atrocious. But even worse is the exception to this rule. What crosses the line and is derided as racist is when black people have the gall to declare that their lives are valuable. A common meme on the right is that the very title Black Lives Matter is parochial or even black supremacist. Pundits insist that the movement should either expand into All Lives Matter, that is, they should stop focusing on the problem of race, or else be deemed and treated as a hate group for resisting systematic racism. So, like, we see, like, in some ways, the conversation has shifted, right? We still see like Twitter trolls and we see, people, calling Black Lives Matter black supremacists. But we also see, conservatives like during like the height of the George Floyd stuff, kind of like having to pay some sort of lip service to George Floyd and Black Lives Matter. What's his name? Rush Limbaugh, like, he said I was wrong about, X. Of course, like it doesn't mean anything, right? None of it fucking means anything. But what I'm saying is just numerically, like there's something shifted in the last 5 years, right? In terms of like people's understanding of race in some ways, like oftentimes for the worse. But I also think that there's been people that talk about race, and I would put Musa al-Gharbi in this category that, they have a far more complex way of understanding race. And it's easy for, with all this kind of messaging that gets out there, it's easy for, in the numerical sense, for Americans to say things like, oh yeah, we support the movement. Again, it doesn't mean that it means anything like in terms of resources, right? Or being an ally, except like in the kind of, Twitter sense of being an ally might entail. But just like I feel like something has shifted in the past 5 years, even though, yes, a lot of it is still the same. Like vaguely the accusations are Black Lives Matters, black supremacy. Why only Black Lives Matter, right? Like that's still a part of it too, right? and yeah, deemed and treated as a hate group. That kind of language is still around as well, right? But it seems to be, it's existing kind of, in an uneasy fashion, I think, with kind of like what's happening in the background, which is why, like, again, like, I'm probably, too optimistic as a person, because I don't know if I could always justify my optimism about, things in general, but I feel like, the last trajectory of the last 10,000 years is one that I would, want to be on, right? And I mean, I had a similar argument with Dan Schneider about this, but in the Artifact After Dark episode about the election, maybe I'll turn out to be wrong here, but I feel like something has shifted in the last 5 years. Anyway, I said I wasn't going to rant about this fucking article, but this is what I'm doing. Okay, so look, I promise I'm going to stay disciplined, but I should have brought more water. The real enemy. Of course, the favorite retort from Republicans to BLM is that the real threat to Black Americans isn't cops, but black-on-black violence, which they claim activists are ignoring or deflecting from in order to expropriate blame to others. There are many glaring holes in this narrative, starting with the fact that activists are not denying black-on-black crime, nor are they neglecting it. In fact, one of the purposes of BLM is to reduce these killings as well. The cause of violence among African Americans isn't our blackness, but instead living in areas concentrated poverty. And again, it's difficult to overstate the significance of law enforcement and the justice system in perpetuating these conditions. Hence, the importance of focusing on the police, courts, and jails for reducing violence against Blacks by all parties, right? Just like for anyone that's not like initiated into like my belief structures, if you're an old time viewer, you probably are, which might be a bad thing, by the way. I'm not. It's not. It might turn out to very well be a bad thing. So black on black crime, right? Clearly, when we're talking about structural racism. If that is corrected for, right, black on black crime itself disappears to the same, degree that white on white crime has disappeared, right? To the extent that you could even say that it has disappeared. Right. So, that's not being neglected. And yeah, BLM like was and is like doing lots of stuff like related with like, actual, verifiable, quantifiable, like anti-violence initiatives, like, some of the programs that really help diffuse violence are things that people, like leveraging human nature for the purposes of, I'm not going to get into it. Oh my goodness. I said I wouldn't. In defiance of these realities involving poverty, race, crime, and policing, Republicans seem to be gearing up for a possible law and order campaign a la Nixon, Reagan, or Bush one in order to rile up their voter base. So this is where I find this essay especially interesting. Okay, so again, in defiance of these realities involving poverty, race, crime, and policing, Republicans seem to be gearing up for a possible law and order campaign. So, this was before Trump was the norm. And even then, he is detecting that the narrative from conservatives then, and even from like, I guess liberal media then was, we're going to get like, a law and order type president. And, the question is like, is Trump a really like kind of like law and order president? I think to some degree, like obviously yes, because he does all the fucking messaging. He doesn't want to address police violence. He's constantly retweeting BLM conspiracy theories. On the other hand, we could point to like his own personal criminality, and after pointing to his criminality, we then just have to say like, hey, but isn't that kind of like so obvious? Like if you're going to so overcompensate as a candidate that you're going to be the law and order guy, all that means is that you yourself are, in some way criminal, right? So, and it's just interesting how like in you get hints of what came after, right? Just like in just like with like a conceptual understanding of like 2015, you get a conceptual understanding and also a prediction for 2016, and you get to be right, right? Because he ultimately did say that Trump was highly competitive and he would gain, in minority votes, and whites would not gain with Clinton fast enough. So Trump already was like sort of, what did Trump truly shape that campaign, or what, was it simply a necessity at that point? That's another question. Obviously, Trump is a unique figure, but if it wasn't Trump, then somebody else that postured as the law and order type who did a kind of like, kind of like coup attempt type presidency, like over and over again, like pushing back against investigations. Like it seems like 2016 was kind of ready for that, right? History is always ready for whoever that comes. Like that's the thing that we need to always remember. History is always ready for no matter who comes. So perhaps no one is more eager for this than the Democrats. So Democrats are looking forward to somebody like Trump, and they did in 2016 and 2020, right? Trump was an asset for them, right? The 2016 race is shaping up to be surprisingly close due to the unfavorability of likely Democratic nominee Hillary Clinton among likely swing voters. So remember, she was number 2 unlikable, like the second least liked in the last 30 years in 2016 of all politicians. Trump was number 1. But if you slice it that fucking thin, right, it's between one guy that's hugely disliked and someone else that's almost as much disliked. Any kind of like random fucking intervention where, you ultimately say like, it shouldn't have been enough to get people to vote Trump. Like it's going to be enough to get people to vote Trump. Okay. Like really, like for everybody that says they're a pragmatist and they think that, Hillary Clinton was a great pragmatic choice. How's that pragmatism? Anyway, I'm off to the races once again. Sorry, guys. As a result, the DNC is eager to conjure a Republican boogeyman. Ooh. To drive blacks to the polls. Ooh. African Americans amount to 25% of the Democratic base, but have demonstrated anemic support for the party's leading candidates relative to the enthusiasm for Barack Obama. Oh my goodness, 2015, what was the prognosis? We're going to get a law and order type candidate. Democrats will welcome it as a boogeyman. What is that? Bugbear. Yeah, bugbear. Bugbear. I like bugbear than boogeyman. So they're waiting to conjure up this bugbear. Trump comes and he's perfect. He's the law and order candidate, right? And he's a boogeyman. And all throughout 2016, it seems that the Democratic strategy was, let us simply make this election about one thing only, which is Trump. Not a referendum of what he did, but a referendum on what he wants to do and what he's like and whether or not we're sufficiently disgusted by him. Let's make the election about that. I said this before, Thomas Ferguson, when he analyzed the role of policy discussion in the 2016 election, he found that Clinton discussed policy less than any other candidate that he could find on record. Right? This is kind of important. So we don't have to do much in way of energizing a base or in way of having a real exciting platform. We're simply going to say, Trump is a villain. Don't we just cherish our ideals, right? We're making an election about ideals. This is just insanity. And here he is on record saying this is dangerous, right? So I want to give Musa al-Gharbi some credit here. I'm off again. It's never going to stop. Never going to stop. We're never going to stop. Never going to stop. Never going to stop. In light of the aforementioned Republican hostility towards Black Lives Matter, it may be tempting to think that the movement should formally align itself with the DNC, helping to mobilize the Black vote on their behalf. But actually, this sort of mentality is precisely the problem. Regardless of how well BLM were to advocate on behalf of the DNC, there's no reason to think racial inequality would be a top policy priority for Hillary Clinton, which is true, right? I mean, this was in 2015, and we had at that point, by the election time, now over a year of electioneering, right? Campaigning. And she did not have a major, a Black platform. And by the way, when I say something like a Black platform, let's understand what we have to mean by this at a minimum, okay? We know that Black people had been slowly building up wealth to bridge the Black and white divide, right? The average white family has something like $150,000 in net worth, usually like tied up into their, home equity or whatever. And the average Black family, I think I forget the exact number, but it's something between like 5 to 15,000. So it's much, much smaller. Okay. We know that exists for historical reasons. We know that those historical reasons were not ever properly adjudicated, nor compensated. And we know that, since like the subprime, mortgage collapse, which entangled lots of Black homeowners, right? They came into the Obama administration, like having lost so much wealth. And by the time that administration was over, we had Black people at 1989 levels of wealth. So you could take a positive or a negative view of Obama. Like, we don't have to even judge that here. What we can say objectively, though, is as follows. There was something that Black people could not help, which is a cataclysmic event that further accelerated the divide between Black and white. And we know that 8 years of a Democratic administration did not even begin to start reversing that, right? In any like substantive way, except to get back again to like 1989 levels. That also happened. Is that going to get Black people to the polls, like, or white progressives, people like me, that don't necessarily have the same, stakes as other people do, but this is what roughly a third of the electorate believes. And if we're talking about like a broad coalition, you need to find a way to get that 33% right with you all the time, while not alienating the other 66. And that's doable, right? So we didn't get a platform under Obama for the real issue, which is how do we start to close this divide between Black and white wealth, and in a way that's like just fucking hop to it. Like, can we like fucking hop to it? How long is this shit gonna be done? This is so annoying. Oh, another crisis. Oh, another yawning gap. It expands. I am fucking talking about 2019 numbers. I'm not talking about coronavirus numbers. I don't know how bad that divide got with coronavirus. Okay? You could have easily added on $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 of divide between Black and white because of coronavirus. Biden has to, at a minimum now, get Black people to like pre-coronavirus, right? At least pre-2020. Even if you say, okay, guys, we're not going to get you enough. So you could be like pre-2007 levels. But at least we could get you pre-2020 at a minimum, right? Like if Biden doesn't like do like the equivalent of like maybe $30,000 worth of wealth transfer into like the average Black pocket, it means that after his tenure is over, Black people are doing worse than when they started with him. And it means they're not going to vote for him in 2024. Isn't this so fucking obvious? Like, I think this is obvious. She had no platform, right? So when we talk about a platform, at a minimum, a 2020 platform needs to be, this is the plan right now, right fucking now, to get black people to pre-2020 wealth depletion numbers. And then maybe we could have bullet points which bring us 2008, 1989. Now let's bring it, you know, to 2021 in a way that's actually becoming, right, of 2021. Anyway. So this is right. We have 1 year of electioneering. She didn't say shit about black people. Why would she? For one, there are many Democratic voters who sympathize with the Republican portrayals of BLM, and accordingly, Democratic lawmakers who are hesitant to fully embrace the movement. Wow. Like, I know it's all optics, but imagine imagine reading this and thinking in 5 years, Nancy fucking Pelosi and Chuck Schumer will be kneeling with I don't know what it was, some kind of African garb, right? Because of the killing of George Floyd. And Trump would be running an anti-BLM campaign because Democrats would be seen as not just BLM adjacent, but fully having BLM under their umbrella. Imagine knowing that. Imagine thinking that. But back then, you know, this, most Americans, if you look at polls now, you could say polls not mean anything, but most Americans sort of support BLM, although a little bit less, you know, in the months after George Floyd. But most Americans still did, and most white Americans did as well. But I remember back in 2014, 2015, thinking fuck, most people aren't taking a totally, wow, that cop is a piece of shit that choked out Eric Garner. Most people are actually they're still in the fucking Trayvon Martin mode, right? Just like people were justifying Trayvon Martin. They were still doing that in 2014, you know, it was only separated by 2-3 years. And the George Zimmerman going free, that was only 1 year, right? It was in the fall of 2013, and then summer 2014, we have Eric Garner. And most people, you know, but now you look at George Floyd, whether or not it means anything. Listen, I don't want to get into argument about that. The fact is, there's been some sort of psychological shift. There's been something that transpired there. Because something transpired there, you could either leverage it correctly or you could do nothing with it. Okay? Pretending that it's not there, I don't see how it's useful, whether you're a centrist shitlib, and I have centrist shitlib tendencies, I'm not ashamed of that, or if you're a Marxist watching this, denying that this leverage exists, it's here, popular opinion is here, something is here that gives you leverage, denying that exists, it's not, there's no strategy there. There's just you being, you know, a fucking ideological prick, and you don't want to admit it. Oh my goodness. I have to get through this before the night is over. Oh my goodness. But even if the Democrats were authentically united around and committed to pushing the BLM agenda, they would still have to overcome the overwhelming Republican majority in the House, not to mention the GOP's dominance in most state legislatures and governorships throughout the country. This has fucking intensified. Okay, so they have the House, but I don't think governorships, but state legislatures have gone decidedly red. That fucking dual economy in the last year has accelerated so hardcore. If you were in it, good, you did well. If you weren't, you did worse than you've done in 10 years. And this is now emblematic in that rural divide. The GOP is now so firmly in this classically red country, so fucking firmly in it, and now you have all these new shitlib Democrat narratives about why that is. They're blaming BLM, they're blaming cops. You understand how this goes, right? This is a fucking power game. Yes, even things that are technically your side, they're gonna engage in propaganda against factions in your side. This is about leverage of power. This is about concentrating power. Who doesn't want to concentrate power? You think these people are fucking heroes? You think your politicians are heroes? And to the extent that BLM is overtly aligned with the Democratic Party, their proposed reforms would be met with even greater Republican hostility than they already face, destroying the growing momentum for bipartisan reform. I don't have too much to say about that. Realistically, Clinton is not going to spend all her political capital trying to push reforms through under those circumstances, especially as she'll likely be trying to rally public support around regime change in Syria, an intervention she has been championing for the better part of 4 years. As it turns out, Trump didn't ultimately do it, but he seemed like he wanted regime change in Syria too. Like, is it fucking impossible to get any politician into office that takes like normal, non-sociopathic positions on like international relations? I know there's like no fucking incentive because on average America is so fucking sociopathic that international relations has like zero fucking like concern for anybody. Like nobody even cares that Biden now supports Israel moving the embassy to Jerusalem. Like nobody cares about the fact that he's going to be like more explicitly belligerent with China in constructive ways, yes, but also oftentimes perhaps like in somewhat Trumpian ways, or in like just broadly counterproductive ways, specifically because he's responding to 4 years of Trump. But can we have like any fucking politician like get into office that's like not a fucking sociopath? Like, and even if you're not comfortable like saying that they're sociopaths, like let's just understand what happened. Like they start out as like normal naked human beings like you and I, and then ultimately by the end of their lifespan, they have entered into a chain reaction of sorts where after like a fucking series of decisions, they are authorizing, drone strikes. They're authorizing, because they made the calculation that if there is any kind of like terrorism against, your military as you're like occupying two countries, that needs to be dealt with just immediately and swiftly, even if it comes at the cost of civilian deaths, like with you doing just completely needless shit. Like they're born naked like you and I, okay? And ultimately, this is where they're pigeonholing themselves. They're pigeonholing themselves on a yes or no question there, and they're usually saying yes. More broadly, since the end of the Johnson administration, unwavering support among blacks for the DNC has not yielded much. Indeed. Carter contented himself primarily with preserving the gains made under Johnson rather than advancing the cause in any substantive way. The next Democratic president, Bill Clinton, would champion the same law and order policies of Nixon and Reagan in an attempt to consolidate white blue-collar voters, particularly in the South, while Hillary Clinton actively lobbied for these bills. Clinton would go successfully to win the White House twice, but the consequences for African Americans were horrific. Okay, so I believe Bill Clinton won Georgia in 1992. I'm not 100% about it, but I'm pretty sure that he did. He won a number of like surprising states that are now like in play. So the map in terms of substantive changes, it's not like Georgia has, depending on how you like switch in this fucking probability space, depending on how you like play with those fucking variables, Georgia has theoretically sort of been in play, right? You just needed like that, like a little bit of a flux, right? To get that fucking sewer running. We needed to get that sewer running before finally they would vote for Biden again. Yeah, but like this question of like, why are black voters not voting for the Democratic Party anymore? Like the question is what, like why would they, right? Like yes, like things like food stamps, things like like basic like welfare stuff, like yes, stuff like keeping affirmative action, but that's like none of those things do anything for self-actualization. None of those things do anything for anyone other than preventing them from dying, right? Like literally, what the Democrats have done is they've kept huge swaths of the black community on fucking life support, right? And they might be moving them to fucking hospice care, right? I had this open. Where is this? Oh, here. I had to do this on Edge because LA Times had this on a paywall. So this was a report, right, about Clinton in 2001, right, February 19, 2001, after the election. Clinton lost. This is after Bush v. Gore. Los Angeles Times. The headline is federal and state prison populations soared under Clinton, report finds. By Greg Krikorian, Times staff writer. February 19, 2001. Wasn't that an innocent time? White people weren't dying then, or so you thought. The federal and state prison populations rose more under former President Bill Clinton than under any other president, according to a report from a Criminal Justice Institute to be released today. Okay. Rose more under Clinton than under any other president. In fact, the analysis of U.S. Justice Department statistics by the left-leaning Justice Policy Institute found that more federal inmates were added to prisons under Clinton than under Bush and Ronald Reagan combined. So remember, like, Clinton comes like post, like, what I know Dan hates this phrase, post crack epidemic, right? So I think the peak crime in America was 1991, maybe 92. I think it's 1991. And he comes into office in 1993. So already things were set in motion that, crime was dropping worldwide, right? Could be changes in lead standards, no influence on IQ, stuff like that. It could be, it could be, part of like Clinton's policies, but these policies weren't elsewhere. But like worldwide, there was this kind of thing that happened, this kind of like pacification and domestication of human beings. And still, we got this doubling, right? Still, we got this insane rise in the prison population, right? Even if you adjust this for worldwide, what's happening? Weird, right? I remember thinking when Bill Clinton got elected that we would have a chance to turn things around, said Vincent Schiraldi, president of the Institute, a project of the Center for Juvenile and Criminal Justice. But I think we read the tea leaves wrong. Right? This is back to 2001. From opposing a federal commission's push for equalization of drug sentences for powder cocaine and crack cocaine to embracing a 94 crime bill that accelerated the rate of prison construction, the president often stole the show from tough on crime Republicans, the study said. I mean, you could... whatever. Like, I don't want to get into net positive, negative Bill Clinton argument with like free traders. It doesn't matter. The question is this true? Did he steal the show from tough on crime Republicans? And the answer is fucking yes. Like, the power with which he went down on like the criminal class, which means, by the way, only a specific kind of criminal class and a specific kind of location, neighborhood, whatever, right? Everybody else gets off, essentially, as they had, since forever. He was tough on crime, like, and this was more than Reagan. This was more than Bush. Like, can this be justified in any way? Like, I understand. Anyway, I'll get to what I understand about this. Okay. In doing so, it said he left a record that did not square with his rhetoric on such topics as easing mandatory sentences. While calling as recently as last fall for a review of the nation's prison policies, Clinton presided over an administration that in its first term saw an additional 277,000 prisoners incarcerated in federal and state facilities, according to the study. That number compared with 243,000 during Bush's 4 years and 129,000 during Reagan's first 4 years. Clinton was worse on law enforcement and criminal justice than Reagan. You think that might have an effect in the 2016 election? Do you think after like the, Clinton era Musk dies down, do you think black people after like saying, hey, we're now like where we were before Clinton, 1989, you think that that's going to make you vote for Clinton, a Clinton, member of the dynasty? Sorry, that's not sexist. It's not fucking sexist. If you rise as Clinton did to the top, essentially because like your husband is the president and you have like a window that no other, woman in America gets, and you happen to run for president and get the nomination. That's a dynasty, and your dynasty is sainted. I'm sorry, guys. You have to see this ad for the rest of this. Actually, no, they got an inspect element on Edge, don't they? Yikes. I hope we're not deleting text, guys. The fuck? Oh, this must be it. Oh, man. Oh, one time I was doing this and I got a permanent shadow. I had to like reload this page. I'm not reloading this page. Oh, this is it? Oh, yes. This feels so good. Now, I hope when I X you. Great. Oh my goodness. we made room for this shoe. Oh my God. What am I even doing here? Why am I even streaming right now? Okay. During Clinton's 8-year tenure, the total population of federal and state prisons combined rose from 673,000 inmates, 235,000 more than during Reagan's 2 terms. We're such a fucked up country that we're like number 1 in the world for like incarceration per million, and we're like number fucking like 30 when it comes to violent crime. That's the fucking trade-off that we make. And that's the trade-off that we make because we don't want to make any structural changes to like the climate of poverty in this fucking country. So what we do is like we just imprison all these knuckleheads instead. Right? And we love to call them knuckleheads, and we make fucking like campaign promises about knuckleheads. Like everybody that like Trump 2016, all it was like a fucking campaign about knuckleheads. That broadly, generically defined fucking knuckleheads. Insane that these are the real elections that we have. Watch the fucking like Dutch election someday. Watch the fucking, maybe not French. Everybody's dying to be in our fucking culture wars. We're so fucking rich as a globe right now. Average, right? Not medians, but average. We're so fucking rich that our lives are so fucking boring that, we turn out to vote for Joe Biden because the culture war got to us, and we turn out to vote for Donald Trump, right? Record fucking numbers, greater than Obama turnout. Obama brought out his fucking base under the promise of what? I'm not Biden. I'm not Trump. And you're rooting for this shit. So in California, the state prison population, okay. Although most of the national increase in incarceration occurred in state-run prisons, the study found the number of prisoners under federal jurisdiction doubled during the Clinton years, and it grew more than during the previous 12 years of Republican control of the White House. Nearly 60% of those sentenced to federal prison during the Clinton administration are serving time for drug offenses. Like think about it. The number 1 fucking incarcerated in the world, and the vast majority of those people are for things that should be legal. And we all kind of sort of like begrudgingly accept that it should sort of be legal. Not that private entities should be necessarily involved with the manufacture and distribution of narcotics. I think this should be like a state-run monopoly, but everything should be fucking legalized, no matter what they're fucking selling. And the fact that we have like a context in this country that like makes certain people like, if you're a poor person and you want to get ahead, through crime, if you're of that mentality, if that's your personality, you have certain options open to you. You could sell drugs, right? You could, do kidnapping. You could do, muggings. You could do robbing of some sort. You could do burglaries. You could do kidnappings. Did I say that? You could do home invasions. Very, very asymmetrical risks, right? Very, you're not going to get much from any of those crimes, really. Maybe at best, usually a few $1,000s. And in response, you're like, wanted potentially for murder. That's your asymmetrical risk there. But then you have like tons of white people, tons of Jewish people, tons of Asian people, tons of people that are just living in completely different contexts, people that are oligarchs, whatever, that have every opportunity to do crime, but it's a different kind of crime, right? It's not this interpersonal crime that lands you in prison. It's not violent crime in the traditional sense. It's, advertising tobacco to kids. It's dumping mercury into a river. It's, Johnson & Johnson not fucking telling anybody about knowingly having asbestos in their cornstarch products, which I used as a kid all the time. And that kills how many people, like that hurts how many people, that, if not outright kills them, how many people does that take that would otherwise be like rise to the top? Maybe now they have been battered to, this kind of extreme bottom, and all that differentiates one and the other is money, position, luck, bullshit. So like that's 60%, generally speaking. Like none of those should have been incarcerated to begin with. And we had like a doubling of them. Like the thing that America is best for. Let's fucking incarcerate these people doing things that should not be illegal, and doing them out of necessity of probability space. Run that fucking simulation. Run that fucking neighborhood in probability space 1,000 times with all the variables they know about it. Write those probability functions in a way that makes sense. How many of those people are going to sell drugs? How many of those people are going to get killed? How many of those people? Well, we know how many people are going to get killed. 2.5% to 5% by the time they're 40. That's the fucking, when we think about averages, that's the median for many people. That means you will have known many people just going about life that will have been murdered. I mean, that's Bill Clinton's tenure, right? And so here's the explanation, right? A dramatic increase in prison populations was attributable to several factors, Shirley said, including the 94 Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act, which earmarked $30.2 billion over 6 years for, among other things, new state prisons. One condition for receiving the federal funds, he noted, was that states scale back early paroles and adopting sentencing policies requiring that inmates serve more time in prison. So, you get money for law enforcement. You get money for prisons, for putting more people behind bars, which, it's going to make your numbers look better, right? Like if like, instead of like, for example, addressing the homeless, like situation in America, you instead do what is presently done, which is just like make homelessness fucking illegal. Like, if you actually like want to address this stuff and like, make, homelessness like actually not exist, make criminals, not exist. Like you could do what Bill Clinton did and be like, all right, we're just going to fucking put them into this like black box that taints and marks them forever because they are simply, the detritus of the fucking, not the detritus. They are, one of the outcomes in the fucking probability space, of their station in life. So we're going to put them in a black box and they're not going to make any trouble. We have a society that fucking like processes the sausage, and the sausage comes out as, a community where 5% or 2.5% of its males are murdered by the time that they're 40. And to not deal with the ramifications of that, let's fucking take these sausages and now fucking stick them in this like black box freezer. You could do that. That's a strategy. It could have worked. Hey, America's a fucked up place, but it enjoyed a fucking dip in crime to like historical lows right now. Historical fucking lows. Historical fucking lows worldwide. America enjoyed it, and despite being a totally fucked up country. This shouldn't have happened, right? Not in America. Not in America. But it happened. You know, could have been ultimately, you know, partly because like all the troublemakers, anytime like you have like the logic in your society forcing troublemakers to come out of the other end, just fucking take these troublemakers and just fucking put them in a dungeon, right? And then there's no problem. It's a possibility. Hey, people that don't want to attribute the reduction in crime to this because they have their own ideological leftist biases. Hey, I share your fucking biases, but this is a great argument for what I'm making, isn't it? Isn't it? So instead of being scared of a very fucking obvious argument like the one that I'm making, actually utilize it to like, you know, like just bash the other fucking side over the head with it. Like this is what they did. This is what Clinton did. He fucking turned black men into sausages. And after turning them into sausages, he fucking put them in a black freezer. Pitch black fucking freezer ass fucking dungeon. And he said the problem was solved. And then Clinton ran in 2016. And then they said it's the racists didn't want to vote for her, and they wanted to vote for Trump. Right? That was the narrative. Let me see what's going on here. Where are we at, guys? All right. All right. So let's just finish up with our friend Musa. Yeah, I keep forgetting his name. It's not because I'm a racist. I know it's like I look like a stereotype, so why I got forgetting the black guy's name. But I'm actually very about everybody's name. I really blank a lot. I'm sorry, guys. Okay, so this is where we left off. More broadly, since the end of the Johnson administration, and wavering support among blacks at DNC has not yielded much. Okay, we just went through the Bill Clinton shit, right? This is the tail end of Bill Clinton. Fucking incarceration, you're fucking sausages now. Tail end of Obama. Welcome back to fucking 1989. Isn't it great that it's not 2008 again? That's the message. Even Barack Obama, our first black president, said little and did even less to address racial inequality until the 11th hour of his tenure. This is true. Instead, he has put forward some executive orders which, while admittedly useful, are non-binding and imminently reversible by the next administration, which I think, I forget exactly what they were, but I think reading something about this might have happened. And throughout, he has dedicated almost as much time and energy valorizing and defending law enforcement and other agents of the criminal justice system, while lecturing blacks about their own supposed cultural deficiencies. Like, to look back in the last 12 years and think that, what we need is like ICE valor. I mean, okay. I mean, you could have. Like, you could have been like the Republican light to like, Trump's like fucking valor and, starting 2 wars. You could have done the Obama thing of droning and, not taking a hard line on like fucking nationwide police departments. But people are not going to care after a long enough time span, right? People are not going to accept your 2016 boogeyman, but they would in 2020. The question is, do they have that fucking intention? Because I'm fucking done. If Trump reverses this fucking election somehow and becomes dictator for the next 12 years, I'm not talking about politics. I'm fucking done over the last 4 years. So let's get quiet, guys. Let's do this kind of like, there's not shit to talk about now, is there? We're doing this kind of theoretical ass discussion. We're looking at articles from fucking 2015, guys. Listen, we are the fucking leisure class. We got to understand that, okay? We are the leisure class. We're looking at articles from 2015, right? Because we want to predict the future retroactively. You just feel that fucking syrup, just coming off your body, don't you? And this is really all the black community has to show for its alliance with the Democratic Party over the nearly 50 years since the end of the Johnson administration, despite how critical African Americans have been to the success of the party. We deserve better and we can do better. Absolutely. And I'm just going to read read how he ends this in the comment after. I'm going to allow him to speak uninterrupted. I'm not going to be the racist white guy perpetually interrupting a black scholar. But it's a good set of paragraphs. The reason there has been so little progress in racial inequality is because one party, the RNC, has written off black voters as unwinnable, while the other, the DNC, takes us for granted because we seem to have no alternative. This allows both parties to safely ignore issues affecting the black community in order to focus most of their efforts on so-called swing voters. Now, oh, sorry, I wasn't going to do that. If black people want to be taken seriously, our vote needs to be seen. Our vote needs to be seen as up for grabs. Yes, we need to challenge and encourage both parties to compete for our support. Because while blacks may only amount to 12% of the population, we can easily become a spoiler for Democrats or a kingmaker for Republicans. If we demonstrate a greater consciousness of our political capital and a real willingness to exercise this power, if our demands are not met, the RNC would not be trying to suppress the black vote, but to turn it. And Democrats would thereby be forced to earn the allegiance of African Americans, rather than just coasting as our de facto least worst option. It would be a much healthier dynamic for all involved, particularly black people. Accordingly, BLM is absolutely right to confront Hillary Clinton, to be suspicious of Bernie Sanders, to resist party affiliation, and withhold endorsing of a presidential candidate in 2016. But we can take it a step further. Now that Black Lives Matter has released a policy platform detailing concrete reforms, we should declare to politicians, public servants, and other stakeholders that if they are working to make substantive progress on these issues, to tangibly realize our agenda through the legislative or bureaucratic process, then they have our vote and we have their back, right? Sorry. It doesn't matter if they are progressive or conservative, Democratic, Republican, or independent. It doesn't matter if they're seeking to reform law enforcement and the criminal justice system because they're primarily concerned with blacks, Latinos, Muslims, or impoverished whites. It doesn't matter if they are focused on preserving the integrity of the system, redressing moral wrongs, or simply winning elections. If they are moving the meter on these issues, we are for it. At the same time, the movement should be clear that if policymakers try to co-opt our message but don't meaningfully follow up on their commitments, we will hold them to account for that too. Black Lives Matter has rightfully proclaimed that it doesn't need or want empty pledges of solidarity or other forms of token support from cynical politicians. What we need is to save black lives and to improve the quality of those lives. I mean, excellent fucking article. I mean, just good. You know, just in terms of just like pure political, like policy writing, thinking, whatever. Fantastic for those purposes. I mean, like this part, like it would be a much healthier dynamic for all involved, particularly black people. Like this is exactly it. Like I wonder to what degree white liberals understand what they're doing, like when they're sort of doing the same old fucking, cringe 1960s condescending shit of like, be patient, guys. That was like the line that Malcolm X and MLK used to fucking make fun of, in the early 1960s, right? Because the line back then was, guys, be patient. We're trying to get this done, but it has to be on our schedule. It can't be on your schedule, guys. But here, why don't you just vote in the interim? That has, I still see the same mindset in white liberals, right? They're like, like the whole Ice Cube thing. I'm not sure if you guys know, but like Ice Cube, he had this like contract with Black America thing that he wrote up, social justice, explicitly focused on the black community. It's policing, it's like economics, it's a lot of, it's a comprehensive platform. And, he put out feelers to the Biden campaign, to the Trump campaign. And the Biden campaign said, we saw what you did, Ice Cube, but let's talk after the election. And the Trump campaign said, hey, let's talk today. Let's talk now. Let's meet with us. And, I can't say for certain that this could have swayed any black voter. But when Ice Cube's out there and he has fans, actually, no, I will fucking say fuck this shit. Fuck the bullshit. Like, say the obvious truth. Okay? Ice Cube has millions of fucking fans. Okay? He's one of the best fucking rappers ever, right? He's one of the best. He's not just a fucking celebrity. He's an actual good rapper. He was an artist in his prime, and he has tons of fans. Many of them are black fans. If he says publicly, Biden didn't want to fucking meet with me, and Trump did, and so I met with Trump, and now the Democratic Party established is attacking me everywhere on the media. I have these dumb fuck interviews that I have to give. People are dragging me on Twitter. I have black fans. They're going to see this. Is not one of them going to say Ice Cube is being treated unfairly? Really, the Biden campaign should have met with him, and that should have been the signal. And Biden met with Cardi B. Fucking me with Ice Cube. What the fuck? Biden was that busy he couldn't put that shit on the fucking docket? A Zoom call with Ice Cube. And you know what? You know what he could have done? You know what he could have done? On that Zoom call with Ice Cube, they could have started talking about some classic films from Ice Cube's 1990 days. And Biden could have announced a program for federal marijuana legalization. But it's, but how would you get out the black vote? Well, here you go. The money that you make federally for marijuana, that goes into education. That goes into healthcare. That goes into rehab programs. That goes into, I don't know, it could be a sovereign wealth fund for everybody that was ever fucking incarcerated or arrested or hassled in some verifiable way for marijuana. They get compensation for that. Hey, we've been fucking up for decades and decades, and everybody knows this, and we more or less admit it. That's why we know like federal marijuana is coming eventually. But we're just gonna like stave off as much as we can. Imagine that wealth fund. And imagine it fucking multiplies. And imagine it goes into the pockets of black voters who are, as we've said, disproportionately impacted by this kind of legislation, by this kind of incarceration, by the facts of the matter. And, if black people have this set of grievances, like, they should be able to say, no, like, we're not supporting Democrats. Like, we're going to leverage our vote to actually get what we want. Right? They threatened to withhold it in 2016, and they did, and Clinton lost. They couldn't fucking stomach withholding it in 2020, and Biden won. But you get to run against Trump exactly twice in your life, okay? This is a twice in a lifetime. You think about it, guys. You fucking seen it once. Trump got elected. He got kicked out. You saw that. He lost. Now, maybe he runs in 2024. That's very possible, right? But you don't get Trump, I guess, more than 3 times, technically, in that situation. And, what are you going to do for the black vote then? Right? Black people aren't going to be disgusted by Trump forever. Because, yes, they are people. Black people are people, yes. And they're just as disgusted, by Trump as others. But Trump won some support. And whatever Trump did to do that, Republicans know, like, this isn't a secret. Republicans know this. They're going to find a way to capitalize on it. So what do you do as Democrats, right, to get black support? What do you do as Democrats? Because, again, shaming is bullshit. That's not going to move the needle. Probability space. You're a party. You are a macro power fucking broker. Okay. You have leverage like nobody else has. Okay. The candidates that you run, the people that you support, the platforms that you curate, the donations that you seek, the promises that you make, the promises that you keep. Right? Because if Republicans are finding, like, what are they going to find, right? Maybe that was the legislation. Maybe it was the 2018 legislation. It was like, I think it was December 2018 that Trump passed. It was in the works since like 2015. Like all Trump doesn't get fucking credit for it. A lot of people want to give Trump credit for it. He doesn't get any fucking credit for it because all he did was not veto it. Okay. It was in the works for years and years, but it passed, and it had positive effects in the black community just by passing, right? Maybe that was part of it. Who knows? Maybe black men are turned on by if you're growing up like in a sort of competitive like prove something environment, which we've all conceded with the black communities are sort of like forced through. Trump kind of like acts that way, right? Trump has that kind of like he's living the fucking power fantasy, so we have like a personality, we have policies. If they're offering those kinds of policies though, like what are Democrats going to offer in 2024? Like that has to be part of the equation, right? Because if Republicans understand that they could survive by funneling black votes, what's the next step? Like, because you can't, like, the culture war right now, 2020, this was fucking peak culture war. We had a fucking culture war about mask wearing. Dumb fuck people walking around without masks into stores and shit, into gyms and shit. Don't care about catching a fucking virus because they don't believe it. Okay? We had a fucking, like, you're not going to get any more peak culture war than that. Okay? You're like, things are going to have to turn down a bit. Like, culture wars are going to still rage and roil and continue, but that shit's going to be turned down a notch for a few years. We're going to see it on the outskirts. It's going to be the kind of fucking like internet kind of culture wars that we engaged in 2013, 2014 when like wokeism first started. But it's not going to be the Trump style hysteria of like, I mean, I shouldn't have done this, but I did spend the first 2 years of the Trump administration watching a ton of cable news, Fox, CNN, MSNBC, all the clips. Like, now that 2 years have passed and I don't watch that shit anymore, the things they were saying have been in large part so disconnected from reality, even if a lot of it was true, right? So again, questions, answers. Question, what are Democrats going to offer to black voters in 2024? Because if the answer is nothing, if the answer is the 2020 platform, if the answer is the 2008 platform, it means that Republicans are gaining black voters, and all you have to worry about is gaining more suburbanites. But they're not going to give a shit because you don't get Trump in 2024 probably, okay? You don't get the disgusting lightning rod. You get some person that is just as bad, but doesn't have like grab 'em by the pussy tapes, or doesn't have like 200 rape allegations or whatever. From Dems, crumbs, Aaron March. Yep, you get crumbs from Dems. But again, like, it does the Democratic Party want to survive? It would have to do a lot of this. Like, I think we're going to start seeing those fractures in 2024. If not an actual true like third party challenge, that'll go somewhere that maybe might have like Bernie Sanders style support. We're going to get like,